The people everyone ignores are usually the first to notice when something is wrong. Rain hammered against the 30-foot glass windows of the Beaumont Grand Ballroom, while Manhattan glittered in blurred gold beyond the storm. Inside, crystal chandeliers shimmered over hundreds of guests dressed in black tuxedos and silk gowns worth more than most people's yearly salaries. Champagne glasses clinked softly. Expensive watches flashed beneath warm amber light. Somewhere near the center stage, a jazz quartet played low enough for billion-dollar conversations to continue uninterrupted. Claire Bennett moved silently through the crowd, carrying a silver tray of champagne flutes balanced perfectly in one hand. At 26, she had mastered the art of becoming invisible. Invisible people survived longer in rooms like these. Her black uniform fit neatly against her slim frame, her blonde hair pinned carefully into a low bun beneath the soft ballroom lighting. Nobody looked twice at her except when they needed another refill. And Claire preferred it that way. Table 14 needs sparkling water, another waitress whispered while rushing past her. Claire nodded once. Calm. Focused. Her blue eyes scanned the room automatically the way they always did. Exit signs. Security positions. Staff entrances. Service hallways. She noticed details most people ignored because most people never bothered to look. That was why the voice made her freeze. 3 minutes. The words came low and sharp through the static crackle of a security earpiece near the west corridor. Claire slowed slightly without turning her head. One of the event's security men stood near the emergency exit pretending to check his phone. Tall, broad shoulders, black suit. But something felt wrong. His earpiece wire wasn't connected correctly, and his shoes were military-grade tactical boots hidden beneath formal pants. Her pulse slowed instead of rising. That always happened when danger appeared. The world became quieter, sharper. She passed by carrying her tray while pretending not to notice him. Then she heard the second voice through the static. Lights first. Claire's fingers tightened slightly around the tray. Her eyes lifted toward the massive chandelier hanging above the ballroom floor. Nearly 2 tons of crystal and steel suspended over hundreds of guests. A cold feeling settled into her stomach. Claire. Her manager snapped impatiently from behind the bar. Move. Table 7's waiting. Right. She kept walking, but her attention never left the west corridor. Across the ballroom, cameras flashed suddenly near the grand staircase. Nathaniel Reed had arrived. The energy inside the room shifted immediately. Conversations lowered. Heads turned. Even the musicians seemed to play softer. Nathaniel Reed walked through the ballroom with the calm confidence of a man completely accustomed to power. 6'3", dark tailored tuxedo, silver cufflinks, controlled expression. At 38, the CEO of Reed Global had built one of the largest cybersecurity companies in America, and tonight's charity gala existed largely because his name alone could raise $20 million before dessert. People respected him the way sailors respected storms. Carefully, quietly, Claire watched him only briefly before returning her attention toward the suspicious guard. Nathaniel moved through the crowd while investors and politicians reached for handshakes. He acknowledged them with polite efficiency, but his eyes stayed distant. Tired, Claire thought automatically. The kind of tired money couldn't fix. Then she noticed something else. 2 additional security personnel near the east entrance exchanging glances. One touched his wrist twice. A signal, not standard procedure. Claire's heartbeat slowed further. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Another server brushed past her carrying oysters. You okay? He whispered. Claire barely heard him. Her eyes had locked onto a thin red reflection, moving briefly across one of the champagne glasses near the center table. Laser light. Gone instantly. Her breath caught. Not decorative lighting. A targeting beam. Small. Precise. Deliberate. The music continued. Laughter rose near the auction stage. Nobody else noticed. Of course they didn't. Wealth made people feel untouchable. Claire set her tray down quickly beside the bar. I need to speak to Mr. Reed, she said quietly. Her manager blinked in disbelief. Excuse me. Now. Claire, this is a $5 million event. You do not walk up to Nathaniel Reed unless he asks for a drink. But Claire was already moving through the ballroom. Her steps remained calm even while the storm outside rattled the enormous windows. Nathaniel stood near the center platform speaking with a senator when Claire finally reached him. Up close, he looked even more controlled. Sharp jawline. Steel gray eyes. The kind of face newspapers trusted instantly. She leaned closer, just enough to be heard. "Sir," she said softly, "I think your security team missed something." Nathaniel didn't even look at her at first. "Another champagne?" he asked distractedly while signing something for a donor. "No, sir." Claire kept her voice steady. "I believe someone inside this ballroom is pretending to be security." That got his attention. Slowly, Nathaniel turned toward her. His expression remained unreadable. "And you concluded that from serving drinks?" The senator beside him smirked faintly. Claire ignored it. "Please just check the west exit and shut down the lighting rig above the main floor." Nathaniel studied her for one brief second before glancing back toward the crowd. "Miss Claire Bennett." "Miss Bennett," he said calmly, "stick to serving drinks. My team knows what they're doing." Then he turned away. Conversation resumed. Investors laughed softly. Somewhere behind Claire, thunder rolled across Manhattan like distant drums. But her eyes drifted upward once more toward the massive chandelier, trembling almost invisibly above the ballroom floor, and for the first time that night, Claire Bennett realized she might already be too late. Claire stepped away from the crowd slowly, but her eyes never left the ballroom ceiling. The chandelier swayed almost invisibly beneath the soft gold lighting, moving just enough for someone paying attention to notice. Nobody else did. Why would they? The room was full of people who believed expensive buildings could protect them from bad things. Outside, rain streaked across the towering windows while thunder rolled low over Manhattan. Inside, waiters carried lobster appetizers beneath $2 million worth of diamonds and tailored suits. The contrast almost made Claire smile. Almost. "There you are." Her manager, Denise, grabbed her arm near the service station. "What on earth were you thinking?" Claire lowered her voice. "Something is wrong." "No. What is wrong is you walking up to Nathaniel Reed in the middle of the largest event this hotel has hosted all year." Denise glanced around nervously before leaning closer. "Do you know how many security layers are in this building tonight?" Claire looked toward the west exit again. The suspicious guard was gone now. "Not enough." Denise exhaled sharply. "Claire, listen to me carefully. Wealthy people do not like being interrupted unless they are in danger." Claire's eyes stayed fixed on the ballroom. "They are." Denise followed her gaze, but saw only glittering chandeliers and smiling donors. "You need sleep." Then her expression softened slightly. "Look, I know things have been hard lately, but do not lose this job over instincts." Hard lately. That was one way to describe it. Claire nodded quietly and picked up another tray of champagne. She did not argue because arguing wasted time, and time suddenly felt very important. As she moved through the ballroom again, fragments of conversations floated around her like background static. Stock acquisitions, Senate campaigns, real estate deals in Miami, a woman laughing too loudly near the piano, crystal glasses clinking beneath soft jazz music. Normal sounds. Yet none of it matched the cold feeling tightening in Claire's chest. Near the rear hallway, she spotted another detail. One of the emergency exit signs had been disconnected, barely noticeable unless someone knew exactly where to look. Claire stopped walking for half a second. Her father used to teach her things like that. "Danger announces itself quietly," he would say while checking smoke detectors around their old house in Connecticut. "Most people miss it because they are waiting for something loud." Her father had spent 23 years as a firefighter in New York City before collapsing inside a burning apartment building during a winter rescue. Claire had been 19 then, old enough to remember every detail, young enough for it to ruin her life anyway. She had once planned to join emergency response training herself. She had even completed 2 years of cadet security certification before hospital bills and funeral costs ended everything. Life did not always destroy people dramatically. Sometimes it simply exhausted them slowly. A tray nearly collided with her shoulder. "Sorry," another server muttered while hurrying past. Claire blinked back into the present. "Focus." Across the ballroom, Nathaniel Reed stood near the auction stage, speaking with donors beneath the giant chandelier. Calm, untouchable. He carried authority effortlessly, but Claire noticed something others probably missed. He never fully relaxed. Even while smiling politely, his shoulders remained tight. His eyes constantly scanned exits. A man used to pressure, she thought. A man who trusted systems more than people. Then Nathaniel suddenly looked toward her across the crowded ballroom. Just briefly. Claire looked away first. A second later, one of his personal security men approached him and whispered something into his ear. Nathaniel glanced toward the west corridor. For one hopeful moment, Claire thought maybe he had decided to listen after all, but then he simply nodded and returned to the conversation. Her jaw tightened slightly. "Unbelievable," she whispered. "Claire." A familiar voice interrupted her thoughts. Ethan, one of the hotel bartenders, leaned closer while polishing glasses behind the bar. "You look like you saw a ghost. Did you notice the security team? What about them? There are too many near the exits and not enough near the stage." Ethan frowned. "Maybe because Reed is here." "No," Claire shook her head once. "Something feels staged." Ethan studied her expression carefully now. "You are serious." "Very." Before he could respond, the ballroom lights flickered once. Tiny, fast, but enough to make several guests glance upward. The jazz music skipped for half a second before continuing normally. Claire's stomach dropped. Across the room, the suspicious man from earlier reappeared near the loading corridor. Their eyes met for one chilling second. He froze, then calmly touched his earpiece and disappeared through the side hallway. Claire moved instantly. "Claire," Ethan called after her softly. "Where are you going?" "To stop something." Her black shoes crossed the marble floor quickly, but without panic. Panic spread. Calm moved faster. She slipped through the side service hallway just as another burst of thunder rattled the windows behind her. The noise from the ballroom faded immediately once the heavy door closed. Quiet. Cold fluorescent lighting buzzed overhead. Claire moved deeper into the corridor, passing stacked catering carts and folded banquet tables. Then she heard voices around the corner. "Mail. Low. Urgent. 2 minutes." Claire stopped breathing for a moment. "Once the backup generator fails, we move everybody toward the east side. And Reed. He stays near center stage." Claire's pulse became perfectly steady, the kind of dangerous calm that only arrived when fear no longer mattered. Slowly, carefully, she leaned just enough to glimpse the hallway ahead. 2 men in black security uniforms stood beside an open electrical panel. One of them held a tablet displaying the ballroom lighting system. The other wore tactical gloves beneath his suit sleeves. Not hotel staff, not event security. Professionals. Claire stepped backward silently before either man noticed her. Her mind moved quickly now. If the generators failed during a crowded gala, panic alone could injure people. Hundreds of guests. Narrow exits. Overhead lighting rigs. Elderly donors. Staff trapped in service corridors. This was not theft. It was something bigger. Somewhere beyond the hallway walls, the ballroom audience erupted into applause. The charity auction had started. Nathaniel Reed was probably walking toward center stage right now. Claire closed her eyes for one brief second. Then she turned and ran. Claire pushed through the heavy service door and re-entered the ballroom just as applause thundered across the room. Nathaniel Reed stood beneath the enormous chandelier at center stage while a spotlight followed him through soft gold light. Behind him, a giant digital screen displayed the Reed Global Foundation logo above images of children's hospitals and disaster relief programs. To everyone else, it looked perfect, elegant, controlled. But Claire saw the details nobody else noticed. One of the security men near the east staircase had changed positions again. Another stood too close to the backstage power controls, pretending to speak into his headset. Even worse, several emergency exit doors had quietly locked into partial hold mode. Not enough for guests to notice. Enough to slow them down during panic. Claire moved quickly through the crowd, weaving between waiters and wealthy donors carrying wine glasses. "Ladies and gentlemen," Nathaniel's calm voice echoed through the ballroom speakers. "Thank you for being here tonight." His voice carried naturally. Confident. Controlled. The kind of voice people trusted immediately. Claire hated that she noticed things like that. For the past 10 years, this foundation has invested in communities that needed support long before cameras arrived. Another wave of applause rose around the room. Claire kept moving. Near the rear bar, Ethan spotted her immediately. "You look pale," he whispered. "Call 911. Claire said under her breath. Ethan blinked. "What?" Quietly. "Right now." "Claire, what is happening?" "I do not know exactly." Her eyes swept the room again. "But there are fake security personnel inside this ballroom, and they are waiting for the power to fail." Ethan stared at her for one frozen second before realizing she was completely serious. "Oh my God, do not react." Claire grabbed a champagne flute from his tray to avoid drawing attention. "And do not tell hotel management yet." "Why not?" "Because I do not know who is involved." Ethan swallowed hard and slowly reached for the phone beneath the counter. Claire moved away before anyone noticed them talking. On stage, Nathaniel continued speaking while cameras flashed around him. True leadership, he said calmly, is measured by what you protect when nobody is watching. The sentence hit Claire strangely, because despite his arrogance earlier, she believed he actually meant it. That was the problem with powerful men sometimes. They became so used to control that they stopped recognizing danger until it touched them personally. Another flicker crossed the ballroom lights. Longer this time. Several guests glanced upward nervously. The jazz musicians stopped playing for half a second before recovering awkwardly. Nathaniel paused mid-sentence. Claire's pulse sharpened. Then she saw it. Near the side entrance, one of the fake guards subtly raised 2 fingers toward the balcony level. A signal. Claire turned immediately toward the upper lighting structure suspended above the dance floor. Something metallic shifted near the support rigging. Not enough to fall. Not yet. But enough. Her breath caught. They were going to create panic beneath the chandelier. Thousands of pounds hanging directly over the center ballroom. Claire moved toward the stage as quickly as possible without running. Running caused crowds to notice things. Calm kept people alive. Sir. She reached one of Nathaniel's actual bodyguards near the stairs. You need to clear the ballroom now. The man frowned instantly. Step back, ma'am. Look at the lighting supports above center stage. Step back. Please. Her voice stayed calm but sharp. You have less than 60 seconds. The bodyguard's expression hardened. Security breach protocol does not involve waitresses giving orders. Claire looked him directly in the eyes. Then your protocol is about to fail. Before he could respond, the ballroom lights flickered again. This time several guests gasped. Nathaniel stopped speaking entirely now. His eyes narrowed toward the ceiling. Finally, he noticed it too. Somewhere behind the ballroom walls, thunder cracked violently across Manhattan. Then everything went dark. The chandeliers vanished. The music died instantly. Hundreds of voices erupted at once beneath sudden blackness. Gasps. Confusion. Chairs scraping marble floors. Somebody dropped a glass near the stage. Claire did not freeze. She moved. Emergency backup lights flickered dim red along the walls, barely illuminating the ballroom through shadows and smoke-colored darkness. The crowd immediately started shifting toward the nearest visible exits. Too fast. Too disorganized. Exactly what the attackers wanted. Everybody stay calm. One security voice shouted somewhere near the rear. Another voice yelled conflicting instructions seconds later. Panic spread faster than fire. Claire looked upward. Her stomach dropped. One of the massive support cables above the chandelier had loosened visibly in the darkness. The structure tilted almost 1 foot sideways above the ballroom floor. People underneath had not noticed yet. Nathaniel had. His eyes lifted toward the ceiling just as the metal rig groaned softly overhead. Claire ran toward the stage. Move, she shouted. The word cut sharply through the chaos. Nathaniel turned toward her instinctively. Then another terrible metallic sound echoed above them. Several guests screamed. Claire reached the stage stairs and grabbed Nathaniel's arm without hesitation. Now. For one split second, he looked shocked that anyone would touch him at all. Then instinct took over. Claire pulled him away from center stage just as the enormous chandelier shifted violently overhead, showering the ballroom with sparkling fragments of crystal light. Gasps exploded through the darkness. Security teams surged forward. Guests stumbled backward in fear. But Claire's focus stayed locked on the exits. Do not run, she shouted loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. Walk toward the side corridors. Stay together. Her voice carried strangely well through the confusion. Calm, firm, clear. People listened because fear always searched for confidence. Nathaniel stared at her beside the stage, breathing harder now. For the first time all night, the powerful CEO looked genuinely uncertain. Claire barely noticed. Her eyes scanned the ballroom again. One fake guard was already moving toward the Eastern Service hallway during the chaos. Leaving too early. That meant whatever happened next had already started. The ballroom no longer sounded expensive. Fear erased luxury quickly. Crystal fragments glittered across the marble floor beneath dim red emergency lights, while guests crowded toward exits in confused waves. Somewhere near the back wall, a woman cried softly while hotel staff tried to guide people away from the damaged center stage. Rain continued hammering against the giant windows overlooking Manhattan, turning the city skyline into blurred streaks of silver and black. Claire moved through the chaos with steady eyes and controlled breathing. Panic was spreading exactly the way she feared it would. Not violently, quietly, fast enough to become dangerous. Keep moving slowly, she repeated while helping an elderly couple toward the side corridor. There is no fire. Everybody stay calm. Her voice remained low but firm. People listened because she sounded like someone who knew what to do. Nathaniel Reed watched her from several feet away beside two members of his security detail. His tuxedo sleeve was dusted with glittering crystal fragments from the chandelier. For the first time since arriving at the gala, he no longer looked untouchable. He looked human. One of his guards spoke urgently into a radio. We lost half the internal cameras after the blackout. Nathaniel's expression sharpened instantly. Backup systems? Offline. Claire overheard the conversation while scanning the ballroom. Offline. Of course they were. This was planned carefully. Sir. Nathaniel turned toward her again, this time fully. No dismissal. No irritation. Just focus. Claire pointed toward the east hallway where the fake security guard had disappeared moments earlier. One of them went that way. Nathaniel narrowed his eyes. One of who? The people behind this. A nearby donor overheard and scoffed nervously. This is ridiculous. It was a lighting malfunction. Claire looked directly at the damaged chandelier, still hanging unevenly overhead. No, she said quietly. It was not. Before anyone could answer, Ethan rushed through the crowd toward her, pale and breathing hard. Claire, what happened? Police are on the way, but there is another problem. His voice dropped lower. The hotel loading dock alarms were disabled 20 minutes ago. Nathaniel's head lifted sharply. Disabled by who? Ethan swallowed. Security says they do not know. Claire did not like the look that crossed Nathaniel's face then, because it was not fear. It was realization, the kind that arrived too late. Another bodyguard approached quickly from the west corridor. Mr. Reed, we need to evacuate you now. Not until we know what is happening. Sir, this may be a targeted security breach. Claire noticed it immediately. The bodyguard's wording. Too rehearsed. Too polished. Her eyes drifted downward for half a second. Tactical boots again. Different face. Same boots. Her pulse slowed instantly. Wrong one. Nathaniel, she said quietly. The CEO looked at her. Do not go with him. The bodyguard stiffened immediately. Excuse me. Claire stepped slightly closer to Nathaniel without taking her eyes off the guard. Ask him which company issued tonight's security credentials. The guard answered too quickly. Easton Executive Protection. Claire shook her head once. Wrong. Silence fell between them. Nathaniel's real security team exchanged confused looks. Claire's voice remained calm. The Beaumont contracted Archer Security Solutions for this gala. Not Easton. The fake guard moved first. Not aggressively. Not dramatically. He simply turned toward the nearest side corridor with controlled speed. Nathaniel's actual bodyguards reacted instantly and pursued him into the hallway while startled guests gasped nearby. The tension inside the ballroom changed immediately. Suddenly, this was no longer an accident. People could feel it now. Fear sharpened. Questions spread through the crowd in nervous whispers. Nathaniel stared at Claire with a completely different expression now. How did you notice that? Claire looked toward the hallway where the man disappeared. Because people pretending to belong usually focus too hard on looking confident. Nathaniel studied her quietly. The emergency lights painted shadows across his face while distant thunder rolled beyond the windows. Who are you? He asked softly. Claire almost answered. Almost. But another sound interrupted them. A faint mechanical hum somewhere above the ballroom ceiling. Her eyes lifted instantly. So did Nathaniel's. That is not good, Claire whispered. Then every emergency light in the ballroom flickered red again. Once. Twice. The humming grew louder. Guests started panicking again near the exits. Everybody stay away from the center floor, Claire shouted immediately. Nathaniel stepped beside her now instead of behind her. What is that sound? Claire listened carefully. Ventilation system. What about it? It should not be running on backup power. Nathaniel's expression hardened. Can they control it remotely? If somebody accessed the maintenance network. His eyes narrowed sharply. Reed Global installed this building's security infrastructure 2 years ago. Claire looked at him. Then whoever planned tonight understands your systems very well. That landed heavily. Nathaniel turned toward one of his remaining guards. Seal every access corridor leading to the control rooms. Nobody enters or leaves without biometric confirmation. Yes, sir. Claire watched him closely now. The cold executive demeanor was still there, but something else had replaced the arrogance from earlier. Respect. Not complete trust yet, but enough to listen. Somewhere in the ballroom, a little girl began crying near the staircase. Her mother struggled to calm her while people crowded around them. Claire moved instinctively toward them. Nathaniel noticed. Where are you going? To help. It may not be safe. Claire glanced back at him briefly. That is usually when people need help the most. Then she disappeared into the frightened crowd while Nathaniel Reed stood motionless beneath the dim emergency lights watching the waitress who had just uncovered a fake bodyguard faster than his entire security team. And for the first time that night, the most powerful man in the ballroom realized the calm young woman carrying champagne trays might be the only person who truly understood the danger surrounding them. The ballroom smelled faintly of smoke from overheated wiring now. Not enough to trigger alarms. Enough to unsettle people already on edge. Guests crowded along the marble corridors beneath flashing emergency lights, while hotel staff tried desperately to restore order. Expensive dresses brushed against broken crystals scattered across the floor. Somewhere near the auction stage, a violin lay abandoned beside an overturned music stand. Outside, rain continued pouring across Manhattan in silver sheets, turning the city into a blur of distorted lights beyond the towering glass walls. Claire knelt beside the crying little girl near the staircase and gently handed her a folded white napkin. Hey, she said softly, look at me. The child sniffled and looked up with frightened blue eyes. Can you help your mom by taking deep breaths with me? The girl nodded weakly. Claire inhaled slowly. The little girl copied her. One breath, then another. The mother's tense shoulders lowered slightly. Thank you, she whispered quietly. Claire smiled faintly and stood again. Calm spread the same way panic did. Person by person, choice by choice. Nearby, Nathaniel Reed watched the interaction in silence. One of his bodyguards approached quickly from the west corridor. The suspect disappeared into the lower service levels. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. How does someone disappear inside a locked hotel? We believe access codes were compromised. Claire heard every word while scanning the ceiling vents overhead. The ventilation system hum was growing louder. Wrong rhythm. Intermittent. Like someone cycling pressure manually. Nathaniel noticed her listening. You hear something. It was not a question anymore. Claire looked toward the air vents. The airflow changed. Meaning somebody activated isolated circulation zones. One of the nearby hotel managers interrupted nervously. Sir, maintenance says they are trying to restore the lighting grid. Claire turned instantly. No, everyone looked at her. Do not reconnect the main system yet. The manager frowned. Miss, with all due respect, you are a server. And with all due respect, Claire replied calmly. If someone infiltrated the network, reconnecting the grid could trigger every electronic system in this ballroom at once. Silence followed. Nathaniel's eyes narrowed slightly. What systems? Claire counted quietly on her fingers. Emergency doors, elevators, sprinklers, ventilation pressure, backup generators. The manager looked uncertain now. Nathaniel answered for him. Leave the system offline. But sir, the guests are panicking. And they will panic more if the wrong person controls the building. The manager swallowed and hurried away. Claire looked at Nathaniel briefly. Thank you. He studied her carefully beneath the pulsing red lights. You keep talking like someone trained for this. Claire looked away first. A long time ago. Before Nathaniel could ask more, another loud metallic groan echoed above the ballroom. Several guests gasped again. Security teams rushed toward the damaged chandelier area, while people pressed closer together near the exits. Claire's eyes swept the crowd instantly. Too compressed. Too much pressure near the eastern corridor. Dangerous. Open the west side ballroom doors, she said quickly. One guard shook his head. That hallway leads toward the loading dock. Exactly. The guard frowned. That makes no sense. Claire stepped toward the overcrowded corridor and pointed calmly. If everybody keeps pushing east, someone is going to fall. Nathaniel looked where she pointed. She was right. Fear was creating bottlenecks near the emergency exits. Open the west doors, he ordered immediately. The guard hesitated only 1 second before obeying. Within moments, the crowd pressure eased slightly as people spread into multiple hallways. Nathaniel watched Claire again, more carefully this time. You saw that before anyone else. Crowds move predictably when they are afraid. How do you know that? Claire's expression shifted almost invisibly. Because I have seen what panic does. The answer lingered between them. Before Nathaniel could respond, Ethan rushed back toward them holding a tablet from the hotel security office. You both need to see this. On the screen appeared grainy hallway footage from 15 minutes earlier. Two men dressed as security personnel entering the restricted maintenance level beneath the ballroom. Then another figure appeared behind them briefly. A woman, blonde hair tied back beneath a black cap. Claire froze. Nathaniel noticed immediately. You know her. Claire stared at the screen in silence for one dangerous second too long. Ethan looked between them nervously. Claire. She recovered instantly. No, but Nathaniel did not believe her. He could tell by the slight tension in her jaw, by the way her breathing changed almost imperceptibly. The CEO stepped closer. Who is she? Claire kept her eyes on the screen. Someone I hoped I would never see again. Then the ballroom lights suddenly flashed bright white for half a second before plunging back into red emergency glow. Every electronic display inside the room flickered violently. Guests screamed again. Nathaniel's security radios exploded with static. Claire looked upward instantly. They are inside the main control system now. Ethan's voice shook slightly. Can they shut the entire hotel down? Worse. Claire stepped toward the nearest window overlooking the city. Rain hammered against the glass while lightning illuminated Manhattan in brief flashes of silver. Then she saw it. On the roof of the parking structure across the street, barely visible through the storm, stood a blinking transmission antenna pointed directly toward the hotel. External signal relay. Her stomach dropped. Oh no. Nathaniel followed her gaze. What is it? Claire turned toward him slowly. This was never about the gala. Thunder cracked across the sky hard enough to rattle the windows. The ballroom lights flickered again. Then every digital screen inside the room suddenly powered on at once. Hotel logos vanished. Security feeds disappeared. And one line of white text appeared across every screen in the ballroom. System access granted. Nathaniel's face hardened instantly. Around them, frightened guests stared upward in stunned silence while the storm raged outside. But Claire was no longer looking at the screens. She was staring at the blonde woman frozen in the hallway footage still glowing faintly on Ethan's tablet. Because 5 years ago, Claire Bennett had trained beside her inside emergency response certification courses in Brooklyn. And if Madison Cole was involved tonight, then this operation was far more dangerous than anyone in the ballroom realized. The ballroom fell into an eerie silence after the message appeared across the giant screens. System access granted. The white letters glowed cold against the darkened room, while hundreds of frightened guests stared upward beneath flickering emergency lights. Rain slammed against the glass walls overlooking Manhattan, and somewhere in the distance, sirens echoed faintly through the storm. Claire felt the temperature in the room drop, even though the heating system still hummed overhead. Madison Cole. After 5 years, seeing her face again felt like opening a locked door Claire had spent years trying to forget existed. Nathaniel Reed stepped closer beside her. Who is she? His voice remained calm, but sharper now. Claire kept staring at the frozen image on Ethan's tablet. Blonde hair. Controlled posture. Same unreadable eyes. Madison always looked calm in emergencies. That was what made her dangerous. We trained together, Claire said quietly. Nathaniel waited. Emergency response certification, she continued. Brooklyn Technical Academy. Ethan looked confused. You were emergency response certified? Claire ignored the question. Her eyes remained fixed on the image. Madison was one of the best tactical coordinators in the program. Nathaniel studied her carefully. And you? Claire finally looked at him. I left before graduation. The lights flickered again. This time the giant screens changed abruptly. A digital map of the Beaumont Grand Hotel appeared, showing multiple floors highlighted in red. Gasps spread through the crowd immediately. Guests stepped backward instinctively, as if the screens themselves had become dangerous. Nathaniel's security team surrounded him automatically. Claire barely noticed. Her focus narrowed onto the highlighted zones. The maintenance levels, she whispered. Nathaniel followed her gaze. What am I looking at? Claire pointed toward the flashing lower levels beneath the ballroom. They are isolating the building floor by floor. Ethan's face turned pale. Why? Claire answered without hesitation. Control. A sharp electronic tone suddenly echoed through the ballroom speakers. Then a woman's calm voice filled the room. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen." Claire closed her eyes briefly. "Madison." The voice remained composed, almost polite. "Please remain calm. Emergency systems are temporarily under our supervision while we resolve a private matter involving Reed Global Technologies." Panic spread instantly now. People whispered frantically. Several guests tried calling phones that no longer connected. Others rushed toward exits only to find security teams redirecting them away from restricted corridors. Nathaniel's expression darkened. "This is about my company." Claire looked at him carefully. "You already knew someone might target you, did not you?" Nathaniel did not answer immediately. That was answer enough. "3 weeks ago," he said quietly, "someone attempted to breach one of our federal security contracts." Claire crossed her arms slowly. "And you still held a public gala with half the city's elite inside one building." Nathaniel's jaw tightened. The threat was digital, not physical. There is no difference anymore. Their eyes locked for one tense second before another mechanical hum vibrated through the ballroom floor. Claire's attention snapped downward immediately. "Wrong. Very wrong. Everybody away from the elevators," she shouted instantly. Several guests jumped in alarm. Nathaniel looked at her. "What now?" "Pressure systems." Claire pointed toward the central elevator bank across the ballroom lobby. "If they control building automation, they can trap people vertically." Nathaniel turned sharply toward his security team. "Shut every elevator down manually." "Already trying, sir." "Controls are not responding." Claire moved quickly toward the nearest service hallway. Nathaniel followed without hesitation this time. "Where are we going?" "Maintenance access." "Why?" "Because Madison never creates fear without a second objective." Ethan hurried behind them nervously. "Claire, wait." She stopped briefly. "Take everybody toward the Western Conference wing. Fewer glass walls. Wider exits." Ethan nodded immediately. Nathaniel noticed that too. People obeyed her naturally now. Not because of authority, because comms sounded trustworthy when everything else felt uncertain. The three of them entered a narrow service corridor lit by dim backup lights. The ballroom noise faded behind them almost instantly. Claire moved quickly past stacked linen carts and electrical panels while thunder shook the building overhead. Nathaniel stayed close beside her. "You still have not explained why this woman matters." Claire slowed slightly. "Madison believed emergencies reveal who people really are." "What does that mean?" Claire's eyes darkened faintly. She thought fear was useful. They reached a locked maintenance door near the lower stairwell. Claire examined the keypad instantly. They rerouted security encryption. Nathaniel looked surprised. "You can tell that from one glance." Claire crouched beside the panel. "The override sequence is blinking incorrectly." Nathaniel watched her carefully now. Not like a waitress. Like a puzzle. "Who exactly were you before this hotel?" Claire paused for half a second too long. "Someone else." Then she pulled a small silver bobby pin from her hair and slid it carefully beneath the maintenance latch. Nathaniel blinked once. "Seriously? Old buildings always keep manual fail-safes." A soft click echoed. The door unlocked. Nathaniel stared at her openly now. "You are full of surprises." Claire pushed the door open slowly. "So are you." The maintenance stairwell beyond was dark except for faint red emergency strips running along the concrete walls. Cold air drifted upward carrying the smell of metal and rainwater. Somewhere below them, machinery hummed steadily beneath the hotel. Claire stepped downward carefully. Nathaniel followed close behind. "If this Madison wanted your company's systems," Claire said quietly while descending the stairs, "then tonight was never about hurting people." Nathaniel's footsteps slowed. "Then what is it about?" Claire looked back at him over her shoulder. "Leverage." Before he could respond, a loud metallic slam echoed from somewhere deep below the stairwell. Then silence. Nathaniel's security guard immediately reached for his radio. "Static only." Claire's expression tightened. "We are not alone down here." Another sound followed. Soft footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Coming upward from the darkness beneath them. And then a woman's calm voice echoed through the stairwell shadows. "I was wondering how long it would take you to find me, Claire." The stairwell fell completely silent after Madison's voice echoed upward through the darkness. Rain rattled faintly through distant ventilation shafts while dim red emergency strips painted the concrete walls in shadows. Claire stopped halfway down the stairs. Nathaniel stood one step behind her beside his remaining bodyguard. whose hand tightened near his radio, even though static still hissed uselessly through the speaker. Then slow footsteps emerged from below. Calm, measured, unhurried. Madison Cole stepped into view beneath the emergency lighting, wearing black tactical clothing beneath a maintenance jacket. Her blonde hair was tied tightly back, and her pale gray eyes looked exactly the same as Claire remembered. Cold, focused, almost emotionless. "You still move too fast when you are worried," Madison said softly while climbing another step. Claire did not answer immediately. "You are risking hundreds of lives tonight." Madison tilted her head slightly. "No, I am controlling hundreds of frightened millionaires. There is a difference." Nathaniel stepped forward. "Who are you?" Madison looked at him briefly. "Nathaniel Reed." Finally, her voice carried no admiration, only recognition. "You shut down my hotel. Your systems shut down themselves surprisingly easily." Nathaniel's expression hardened. "What do you want?" Madison smiled faintly. "The same thing powerful men always think nobody can take from them." Claire spoke before Nathaniel could answer. "Control." Madison's eyes returned to Claire. "You always were the smartest one in the room." Claire ignored the compliment. "You trained to save people." "No," Madison replied quietly. "We trained to understand systems. People were just part of those systems." Nathaniel studied the exchange carefully now. Two women speaking like former soldiers standing inside a dark stairwell beneath a collapsing gala. Nothing about this felt accidental anymore. Claire stepped lower onto the stairs. "This is not you." Madison almost laughed. "You still believe people stay the same forever. I believe you crossed a line." Madison's expression cooled instantly. "Do not talk to me about lines after what happened to your father." Silence crashed between them. Nathaniel looked sharply toward Claire. Her face remained calm, but barely. Madison continued climbing slowly upward. He spent 23 years running into burning buildings because he believed systems protected people. Her voice sharpened slightly. Then the city abandoned his family before the funeral flowers even died. Claire's jaw tightened. "Stop. You think I forgot?" Madison continued quietly. "I watched you leave training because hospital debt buried your future." Nathaniel stared at Claire now with new understanding. The waitress carrying champagne trays suddenly looked very different in his eyes. Madison spread one hand slowly toward the darkened hotel above them. "Tonight proves the same thing we learned years ago. Systems fail. Wealth protects itself. And ordinary people get crushed underneath." Nathaniel stepped downward beside Claire now instead of behind her. "If this is about exposing corruption, terrorizing civilians is not the answer." Madison looked at him calmly. "Spoken like a man who has never been powerless. You do not know anything about me. I know Reed Global built security contracts that now monitor half the financial infrastructure on the East Coast." Madison's eyes narrowed slightly. "And I know tonight every billionaire upstairs finally understands what uncertainty feels like." A loud electronic buzz suddenly echoed through the stairwell ceiling. Claire looked upward instantly. Madison noticed. "Your ventilation override is reaching full cycle," Claire said sharply. Madison smiled faintly, still noticing everything. Nathaniel looked between them. "What does that mean?" Claire answered immediately. "She is controlling oxygen flow and emergency compartment pressure between floors." Nathaniel's expression darkened. "Can she hurt people with it?" "Not directly," Madison replied before Claire could answer. "But panic always finishes the job eventually." Claire moved down another step. "This is not justice." Madison's calm expression flickered for the first time. "No," she said quietly. "Justice would have happened years ago." The stairwell lights flickered violently overhead. Somewhere above them, a distant crowd screamed again. Nathaniel looked toward the ceiling. "What was that?" Madison glanced at her watch calmly. The ballroom windows just sealed automatically. Claire's eyes widened. "You trapped them?" "Temporary containment." Nathaniel stepped forward sharply now. "You are done." Madison looked completely unbothered. Interesting choice of words from a man whose servers are currently being emptied floor by floor. Nathaniel froze. Claire turned toward him immediately. "What servers?" He hesitated too long. Madison answered for him. The Beaumont Gala was a cover for Reed Global's private cybersecurity summit tomorrow morning. Claire looked at Nathaniel sharply now. "You brought prototype infrastructure systems into this hotel." "Encrypted federal systems," Nathaniel corrected quietly. Madison smiled faintly. "Which are currently being copied through your own emergency network." Claire suddenly understood everything. The Gala. The blackout. The transmission relay outside. This was never about money, she whispered. Madison nodded once. Finally, Nathaniel's voice lowered dangerously. Who are you working for? Madison looked almost disappointed by the question. Still thinking like a businessman. Always assuming somebody signs the checks. Another alarm echoed through the stairwell. Claire noticed something then. Madison was stalling. Her eyes kept drifting subtly toward the lower maintenance level beneath them, waiting for something. Claire stepped backward slightly toward Nathaniel. We need to move. Madison noticed instantly. Too late. Suddenly, every emergency strip in the stairwell flashed bright white. The building vibrated softly beneath their feet. Nathaniel's bodyguard grabbed the railing instinctively. Claire's pulse slowed sharply. Server transfer complete. Madison looked almost relieved. Then she reached into her jacket slowly and removed a small black access card. She held it out toward Claire. I did not come here to hurt you. Claire stared at the card without moving. Then why bring me into this? Madison's eyes softened for the first time all night. Because you are the only person here smart enough to stop what happens next. Before Claire could respond, the entire hotel suddenly went completely dark. Darkness swallowed the stairwell completely. For one endless second, nobody moved. The hum of the building vanished. The emergency strips died. Even the storm outside seemed distant now. Then somewhere far above them, hundreds of frightened voices erupted at once inside the blacked-out ballroom. Claire stood perfectly still, listening. Nathaniel's bodyguard reached instinctively for a flashlight, but Claire grabbed his wrist immediately. No light. Her voice was low, sharp. Madison remained somewhere below them in the darkness. Invisible now. Only her breathing echoed faintly through the concrete stairwell. Nathaniel's voice came quietly beside Claire. What happens next? Claire listened carefully before answering. She is waiting for backup systems to reboot. Madison's calm voice drifted upward again. 32 seconds. Nathaniel frowned in the darkness. What does that mean? It means, Madison replied softly, your company's entire encrypted transfer will complete before outside authorities can reconnect the network. Claire's eyes adjusted slowly to faint storm light leaking through a tiny stairwell window above. Shapes became outlines. Shadows became movement. Madison still stood below them holding the black access card loosely between two fingers. You still have time to walk away from this, Claire said quietly. Madison almost smiled. That is exactly what I told you 5 years ago. Claire felt old memories rising again. Training rooms. Emergency drills. Endless lectures about crisis response and system failure. Madison had always believed institutions were illusions. Claire used to argue with her for hours. People need something to trust, Claire once told her during training. Madison answered without hesitation. That is why they are easy to control. Nathaniel interrupted quietly. Why involve Claire at all? Madison's gaze lifted toward the darkness where Claire stood. Because she still believes saving people matters. Silence followed. Heavy. Complicated. Then the building suddenly jolted softly beneath them. Backup generators. A faint glow returned to the stairwell, one emergency strip at a time. Red light flickered weakly across concrete walls and exhausted faces. Claire looked downward instantly. Madison had moved 3 steps lower during the blackout. Closer to the maintenance level door beneath them. Closer to escape. Claire noticed immediately. Of course she did. Madison noticed Claire noticing. Still too observant. Nathaniel stepped slightly forward now. You are not leaving. Madison's expression remained calm. You still think tonight is about me? Before Nathaniel could answer, every speaker inside the hotel crackled sharply back to life. Then another unfamiliar voice echoed through the stairwell. Mail. Distorted. Transfer complete. Awaiting extraction. Madison's face changed slightly. Just slightly. Concern. Claire saw it instantly. You are not in control anymore, she whispered. Madison looked at her sharply. Claire's pulse slowed further now. Pieces connecting. You planned the breach, Claire continued quietly. But someone else is running the final operation. Nathaniel stared at Madison. Who? Madison did not answer. That was answer enough. Somewhere above them, alarms suddenly began blaring through the hotel corridors. Not fire alarms. Security lockdown alarms. Different rhythm. Different pattern. Nathaniel's bodyguard finally got partial signal through his radio. Sir. Static crackled loudly. Police units are outside, but building access is blocked remotely. Claire looked toward Nathaniel immediately. Your system architecture. Nathaniel's face hardened. They turned the hotel into a locked server vault. Madison spoke quietly now. I only wanted the data. Claire stared at her. But whoever funded this wants leverage over everyone trapped upstairs. Another silence. Then Madison slowly lowered the black access card in her hand. The lower maintenance hub controls manual overrides. Claire narrowed her eyes slightly. You are helping us now. Madison laughed once. Soft. Tired. I am helping myself survive. Nathaniel stepped down another stair carefully. Why should we trust you? Madison looked directly at him. You should not. Then she tossed the access card upward toward Claire. Claire caught it instinctively. Level B control room, Madison said quietly. Manual relay reset. Nathaniel frowned. Why give us that? Madison's eyes drifted toward Claire one last time. Because some people still deserve a chance to do the right thing. Then sudden footsteps echoed below the maintenance corridor. Fast. Multiple people approaching. Madison's expression changed instantly. Alert now. Real fear this time. You need to go. Nathaniel looked sharply downward. Who is that? Madison backed slowly toward the lower hallway shadows. The people who never intended to leave witnesses. Claire's stomach tightened. Madison. The blonde woman paused briefly. You were always the better one between us, she said softly. Then the lower maintenance door slammed open beneath them. Flashlights cut violently through the darkness below. Voices shouted indistinctly through static-filled radios. Madison disappeared instantly into the lower corridor shadows, just as Claire grabbed Nathaniel's sleeve. Move. They ran upward through the stairwell, while footsteps thundered beneath them. Nathaniel's bodyguard sealed the maintenance door halfway up the landing, slowing pursuit for precious seconds. Claire's breathing remained controlled even while alarms screamed through the building. Her mind moved faster than fear now. Level B control room. Manual relay reset. If they could reach the maintenance hub before the attackers secured it, they might still unlock the hotel and stop the system takeover before federal servers disappeared permanently. Nathaniel ran beside her through the red emergency glow, his polished shoes slipping slightly against concrete steps never designed for men like him. Claire noticed anyway. She noticed everything. Halfway up the stairwell, Nathaniel grabbed the railing hard and looked toward her while alarms echoed around them. Why are you still helping me? Claire did not slow down. Because there are 400 innocent people upstairs. That is not what I asked. Claire glanced at him briefly. Rainwater streaked silver across the small stairwell window behind him. Exhaustion shadowed his face now beneath the flashing emergency lights. Not arrogance anymore. Not power. Just a man realizing systems could fail around him too. Claire looked forward again. Because somebody should have helped my father that night, she said quietly. Then she pushed open the upper maintenance door toward the darkened hotel corridors while footsteps continued rising from the stairwell below them. The maintenance corridor above the stairwell felt colder than the ballroom. Industrial pipes lined the ceiling while red emergency lights pulsed weakly along concrete walls slick with condensation. Somewhere deep inside the hotel, alarms continued echoing floor by floor like a mechanical heartbeat. Claire moved quickly through the corridor holding Madison's black access card tightly in one hand while Nathaniel and his bodyguard followed close behind. Behind them, footsteps still climbed the stairwell. Closer now. Level B is this way, Claire said quietly while turning sharply down another hallway marked authorized personnel only. Nathaniel glanced toward her while keeping pace beside her. How do you know this building so well? Claire barely slowed. Every hotel has the same emergency architecture. That is not an answer. It is enough of one. Nathaniel almost pressed further, but another loud metallic slam echoed behind them. The attackers had breached the stairwell door. Claire pushed forward faster. Ahead, a reinforced steel security door blocked the entrance to the lower maintenance control center. A digital panel blinked uselessly beside it. Offline. Claire immediately inserted Madison's access card into the emergency override slot. Nothing happened. Nathaniel's bodyguard cursed under his breath. The system is dead. Claire stepped closer to the panel, studying it through the flashing red light. No, she whispered. It is isolated. Her fingers moved quickly beneath the keypad casing until she found a hidden manual latch buried behind the outer plate. Nathaniel watched carefully while she worked. You really were trained for this. Claire kept her eyes on the wiring. I was supposed to graduate top of the program. The door lock suddenly clicked loudly. Nathaniel stared at her. Supposed to? Claire pushed the heavy steel door open. Life changed. They entered the lower maintenance hub immediately. The room stretched wide beneath the hotel like the inside of a submarine. Rows of servers blinked blue and white through darkness, while giant ventilation turbines hummed steadily overhead. Rainwater dripped faintly somewhere through distant pipes. Computer screens flickered with corrupted hotel security feeds. Claire's eyes moved across the room instantly, analyzing patterns, systems, exits. Then she saw it. 3 transfer monitors near the center server bank. Federal encryption uploads still running. 93% complete. Nathaniel's face hardened. They are still inside the network. Claire moved to the nearest terminal immediately. I need manual relay access. Nathaniel stepped beside her. Can you stop it? Claire's fingers moved rapidly across the keyboard. Maybe. If they rerouted the system through external relays, shutting down the servers could trap every emergency system upstairs permanently. Nathaniel looked toward the glowing monitors. And if we do nothing? Claire met his eyes briefly. Then your entire federal infrastructure package disappears before sunrise. Silence. Heavy. Nathaniel exhaled slowly. What do you need? Claire looked around the room quickly. Time. Then every screen inside the maintenance hub suddenly flickered black. One by one. Silence followed. The giant turbines overhead slowed. Nathaniel's bodyguard immediately stepped toward the doorway. Movement outside. Claire's pulse sharpened. They found us. Nathaniel looked toward the darkened corridor beyond the steel door. Can you finish this? Claire looked back toward the failing server monitors. 96%. Not enough time. Then she noticed something else buried beneath the transfer code. Another hidden sequence running underneath the main upload. Her stomach tightened instantly. Oh no. Nathaniel saw her expression change. What? Claire's voice lowered. This is not data theft. What is it? She pointed toward the hidden protocol. They embedded a recursive shutdown trigger inside the transfer. Nathaniel stared at the screen. Meaning? Claire looked at him directly. When the upload finishes, every read global emergency network connected to this architecture crashes permanently. Even Nathaniel looked stunned now. Hospitals. Claire nodded once. Transportation grids. Emergency response systems. Financial security routing. The color drained slightly from Nathaniel's face beneath the red lights. How many cities? Claire answered quietly. Enough. Then the steel maintenance door exploded inward with a deafening metallic crash. Not violently. Mechanically. Hydraulic breach tools. Flashlights flooded the corridor outside. Nathaniel's bodyguard immediately moved in front of them, while several dark silhouettes approached through the doorway. Claire's breathing slowed completely now. Focus replaced fear again. The lead intruder stepped into view wearing tactical black equipment and a communications visor. Calm voice. Cold eyes. Step away from the servers. Nathaniel straightened beside Claire. Who are you working for? The man ignored the question entirely. This operation is already complete. Claire looked carefully at the visor interface reflecting across his faceplate. Private military encryption. Not hackers. Contractors. Nathaniel noticed it too. This is corporate. The man remained silent. Claire suddenly understood. They hired Madison without telling her the real objective. Nathaniel looked toward her sharply. Can you stop the shutdown? Claire looked back at the transfer screen. 98%. Seconds left. Her mind moved rapidly now. Transfer routes. Emergency relays. Manual overrides. Then she saw it. A secondary bypass hidden beneath the ventilation control system. Old architecture. Analog fallback. Invisible to modern automation. Her father would have noticed it too. Yes, Claire whispered. Nathaniel's eyes locked onto hers. How? Claire stepped toward the main relay console while the armed contractors advanced slowly through the maintenance room. By shutting the system down manually from inside the airflow chamber. Nathaniel frowned immediately. That chamber floods with pressure during emergency reset. I know. Claire. For the first time all night, his voice carried something deeper than authority. Concern. Claire looked at him briefly. Rain thundered faintly through the pipes overhead, while alarms echoed across the failing hotel systems. If I do not stop it now, she said quietly, people much farther away than this ballroom get hurt. The lead contractor raised his voice sharply. Move away from the console. Claire ignored him completely. Nathaniel stepped closer to her. There has to be another way. Claire almost smiled then. Small. Tired. There usually is not. Then she grabbed the emergency override lever beside the ventilation chamber door and pulled it downward with both hands. Instantly, the entire maintenance hub erupted with warning sirens, while giant steel shutters slammed across the server room. The contractors shouted in surprise as thick containment barriers separated them from the control consoles. Nathaniel stared at Claire through flashing emergency lights. What did you just do? Claire looked toward the sealed airflow chamber, slowly filling with white vapor beyond reinforced glass. Bought us 60 seconds. Then she stepped toward the chamber door while the shutdown countdown reached 99%.